everybody, Teresa here. Welcome back to my channel, Lost My Thread. Today is round one of the Battle of the Busty Button-Ups, where I'm going to be looking at the PDF patterns for each of the button-up shirts and seeing which one is my favorite. Now, if you did not see part one of this video, I would recommend checking that one out because this is probably going to be a little confusing otherwise. Part one was where I introduced the contestants, so I'll be telling you which shirt patterns I'm going to be comparing and why I picked the ones that I did. I'll pop a little link to that up there if you want to check that one out. But today is all about getting into the nitty-gritty of the PDF patterns. So getting into what I like and don't like about each of them. I'm going to be opinionated, so get ready. I'm going to be looking at three key categories for this. The first is going to be how easy it is to pick your size. The second is going to be how easy it is to print it off. And the third is going to be how easy it is to piece it all together. Now, I felt like looking at the sizing was going to be really important for this because if you're choosing patterns that are going to fit you well in the bust area, it's quite a specific way to fit. And these patterns all come with different cup sizes, but how you pick your cup size is not the same for all the patterns. I think the best one was the Busty Button-Up blouse by Pattern Scout. Inside their instruction booklet, they have a really clear explanation of how you pick your cup size. So they ask you to measure your high bust compared to your full bust, subtract the difference between the two, and then that will tell you the cup size. That is generally what I did for all the patterns, and I'll get into that in a minute. But this one spelled it out the easiest in the instruction booklet itself. So if you haven't done that kind of calculation before, if you're not sure what cup size to choose, this makes it really clear. Interestingly, in this pattern, it put me in the D cup size. So my high bust is 35 inches, my full bust is 38, so it's 3 inches of difference between the two. And for them, that puts you in a D cup, whereas the other patterns, it puts me in the C cup range. So again, really important to make sure the instructions are spelling that out, or you're going to end up making the wrong size for you. For the Harrison shirt by Cashmerette, it's going to be a very similar instruction, but it's not in the instruction booklet itself. You actually have to go to their website to find that information out, which I don't love. I think if you've printed out the instruction booklet, it should really have all the information in there. And I think it's just making it a little bit more likely that people will choose the wrong size because they don't see in the instruction booklet how to work it out. However, their website is actually really great. If you go to it, it has a really nice tool where you can put in your specific measurements and it will tell you what size to start with, where to grade. I think it is a little bit more detailed way of explaining how to pick your size. But again, you have to go to the website to get that information, which I didn't love. As far as the Mila shirt by Itch to Stitch, this one was a nightmare for picking your size. I gotta be honest with you. So you have different information in the instruction booklet to what's on the website. And how you know which one you're gonna go for is kind of a mystery. So when you look in the instruction booklet, it tells you to choose basically like your bra cup size. So it tells you to measure from your full bust to your under bust. And that is, again, how you pick a bra size, not how you usually pick a sewing pattern size. When you look on the website, they have a really clear diagram of how to pick your cup size by telling you to measure your high bust, comparing that to your full bust, and doing a calculation like the other patterns. I didn't know what to go with because I felt like the instructions said one thing, the website said another. Maybe this is an older pattern, so maybe they've changed the way they do their cup sizes. So for me, as far as picking a size, I ended up measuring the width of the back bodice piece, comparing that to what the ease looked like it was supposed to be in the pattern, and I decided to go with my gut, which was telling me do what all the sewing pattern companies do, go for the high bust compared to the full bust, and that was how I picked my size for that one. It could be a big disaster. Hopefully it won't be too bad. At least the full bust will be the right size, but it'll be interesting to see if the upper part fits me or doesn't. If I end up making the wrong size, I'm not really blaming myself. I'm blaming Itch to Stitch because I feel like they should have told you really clearly how to pick your size. It was not great. As far as picking my actual size for overall, for the bust, the waist, and the hip, when I looked at the Mila shirt, it matched with what I usually end up having to do as far as adjustments. So looking at the body measurements and finished garment measurements, I kept with the same size in the bust and the waist, and then I went up a size at the hip, which is pretty typical for me. For the Busty Button-Up blouse, I was a little surprised to see when I looked at the body measurements that my waist measurement was actually a size up from my bust measurement, even slightly bigger than my hip measurement, which is really unusual for me. But when I looked at the finished garment measurements, it looked pretty different. So if you look on the size chart, they show you different waist sizes depending on which cup size you choose, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because the idea, from what I understand, is that we're looking for tops that fit you well in the bust that aren't necessarily oversized everywhere else. So I thought that was a bit of a peculiar thing to do, and I definitely decided I was not going to be sizing up at the waist there, because I could see that in the end I was actually going to have the same size waist as bust. So for me, like I said, my high bust is 35 inches, my full bust is 38, but my waist is 31. It's quite significantly smaller than that, and my hip is 42. So to me, it did not make a whole lot of sense that it was just going to be straight from the bust to the waist, but I felt like that's probably a little to do with the style for this particular top. It's a looser fit, so I generally decided to just go with that straight for the bust and the waist, and I did still grade up at the hip. The Harrison shirt is actually a little bit different for me, so if you look at their size chart, I am not really on there. The smallest size they offer is a size 12 C cup, which would be for someone with a high bust of 37 inches and a full bust of 40 inches. Mine are 2 inches smaller than that. The waist measurement is actually also an inch bigger than mine, but that's not going to be anything too dramatic. But the hip measurement is actually my hip measurement. So in an ideal world, if I was going to make this pattern, I'd be going for a size 10 C cup at the bust and the waist, and a size 12 at the hip. That doesn't exist at the moment. That's not something that I have on offer. I have heard that Cashmere are in the process of extending their size range all the way down to a US size 0. So I will be in their new size range, but for now, this is what I'm gonna have to go with, a straight size 12 C cup. As far as additional adjustments, I didn't want to do too much on these because I wanted to try to keep them relatively as they are designed. But of course we have our own unique bodies, and there are some things that we're always going to have to make adjustments for. So for myself, for example, I have a slightly forward sloping shoulder. So I know that I always have to do a forward shoulder adjustment. So I just went ahead and did that for the Harrison shirt, and for the Busty Button-Up blouse, I did a 1/2 inch forward shoulder adjustment. I didn't bother doing that for the Mila shirt, and that's just because it has a continuous yoke that goes all the way from the front to the back. So there's no shoulder seam, so I felt like probably best just keep that one where it was. For additional adjustments, the only other thing I did, the Busty Button-Up blouse is designed for somebody who's 5'9". I am 5'6", so that is not going to work out right for me. So I just shortened the bodice by 3 inches, but otherwise I tried to stick as much to the pattern as I could. So that is picking your size. Now I want to talk about how easy it is to print that off. When you're printing, all of these companies offer you just to print the size you need, which I am always going to love. So you can just select the size you want, unselect the ones that you don't, and then when you print it off, you don't have a whole ton of lines overlapping. You're just going to have the minimal number, so the number of sizes that you're going to need to grade between. Makes it so much easier when you're trying to cut out your specific size. Though these all do have instructions of how to do that, I think the amount of instruction varies significantly. So the Busty Button-Up blouse basically just has a paragraph, some words of information. If you haven't done this before, you might not know what they're talking about. The Harrison shirt and the Mila shirt both had some really clear photographed instructions, so basically a screenshot of what it looks like, highlighting to you the bits that you're going to want to change to make sure that you're choosing just the sizes, the right scaling, the right number of pages that you're printing as well. So I thought that was just a nice additional element if you haven't done this kind of printing before. Both the Busty Button-Up blouse and the Mila shirt also tell you the specific pages that you need to print, which I am a big fan of. I have looked at the charts for the different pages that you print out numerous times on different patterns to try and pick out, depending on my size, depending on the version I'm making, do I need to print every single page? So I love that they give you this option. The only thing I will say that was not great is the Busty Button-Up blouse. When they give you the specific page number, it's not actually the right pages. So if you look on the little diagram, I'll try and show you so that you can see what I'm talking about. If you look, you might see that pages 25 and 26 include the bottom part of the back bodice, but it's not included in the pages that it says you need to print. So I had to go back in and print those separately. I have emailed the pattern designer. They said they're going to update it for future versions, but I thought that was worth noting that that was missing from the selected pages they're telling you to print. As far as printing off the size once you've picked the cup size that you want to print, they all have really different ways of doing this, which was interesting. So the Harrison shirt, when you look on their size chart, they've got CD cup as one size, EF cup as one size, GH cup as one size. So you will just open the CD cup PDF pattern and print all the pages to be able to get your size printed out. The Mila shirt is one massive PDF document. So the first 21 pages of the document are the instruction booklet, which you can choose to print out or not, depending on how easy it is to access your phone or your computer when you're sewing. The next section are pages that everybody needs to print. So it's going to be basically anything that isn't really the top part of the bodice. So the bottom part of the bodice, the sleeves, the collar, the back shirt, etc. So you're going to print that page number off for everything. And then the final pages that you need to print are going to be different pages depending on which cup size you've got. If you look at the Busty Button-Up blouse, they have one PDF file for all of the universal pages, so everybody needs to print off the universal pages, and there's a separate PDF file for your front bodice, which is basically what's going to affect the size of the cup size. I think they're all perfectly fine ways to do it, but I will say that the Busty Button-Up blouse did catch me out for this as well. When I was looking at the cup size that I needed to make, I saw that I needed the D cup, and I just printed the D cup bodice, because alphabetically that was at the top of my files, and I thought that was going to be all the pieces that I needed for that top, and it was only later on when I was piecing it together that I realized, oh wait, there's a separate universal pattern pieces file that I hadn't spotted because it was lower down in the alphabet, lower down on my list, and I didn't even bother to notice that. And that is me, that's not the pattern designer, but it caught me out, so I thought I should just be open with you that that's something you don't want to do if you're going to be making this shirt. Hopefully you don't make the same mistake that I did. Something that the Mila shirt did that I thought was kind of clever is the only pages that you're printing out for your specific bust size are just the upper front bodice, so from the waist upward. The bottom half of the front bodice is exactly the same for all the different sizes because you're not changing your bottom half of your body just because your bust size changes. So you piece together these two different elements and then tape them together to each other. So you tape the top bodice, depending what cup size you've made, and put that together with the bottom half of the bodice. If that's not really clear, I will put some images up so you can see what I'm talking about, but I felt like it came together really neatly because there were some little diamonds that you're going to use to join them together, and I felt like that worked pretty nicely, and like I said, it seemed kind of nifty to be able to piece that together. And like I said, it made sense because theirs is just one big PDF pattern. You're not going to have a whole big bodice piece taking up a whole ton of pages when you really just need to be changing the top half. Something that I feel like I need to point out, just because it did bug me and put me off using this pattern company a little bit in the future. If you look on the Harrison shirt print layout, so how you're actually piecing these PDF pages together, I am the smallest size, so I am going to be making the innermost lines of all of those pattern pieces. Because of the way these are laid out, because these are going to be for a larger size range on the whole, I was just a tiny sliver on many of the pages that I had to print out. So I had to print by far the most pages for this pattern, and I ended up just using a tiny bit of the pages for many of them. So there felt like just a lot of wastage, a lot of wasted paper. Like I said, I know this is because I've chosen a pattern company that is really aimed at people who are of a larger size than me. And I'm very conscious that the plus size sewists, the bigger sewists, struggle way more than I do to find pattern companies that suit them. So I'm not saying that there's a problem with Cashmerette, and I really love that they do cater to that size range, but it just meant for me, from the size that I was trying to print, I had a lot of paper printed out where I really barely used any of that page, and it just felt a bit wasteful. Now, anyone who has worked with PDF patterns already knows that the hardest part of it is actually piecing those pages together once you've printed them out. So I want to tell you how the different pattern companies made that easier for you. Now, the thing that will make or break how easy it is to put this actual PDF together is what markings they give you to help you to join one page to the next. So they will all have some kind of markings on one half of the page that you're going to then join up to the other half of that page. And that's how you're going to know that you're joining it together nice and neatly and avoiding it being completely skew-with, avoiding bumps, gaps, all those kinds of things. So the one that I felt like did not do a great job for this was the Busty Button-Up blouse. They gave you a marking at the side of each page, so 2 halves of a circle on the side of each page to join up, and 2 halves of a circle at the top and the bottom of each page. And if you match those up accurately, it works. But having a single marking just means it's that little bit easier to maybe have it angled slightly off so that you couldn't quite tell that it wasn't exactly overlapping and it looks more or less like a circle, and in the end your pages just aren't going to match up. For this Pattern Scout one, you did have this gray lines all the way around, which in the end I used as sort of the inside of the page, and I felt like I could then form a kind of crisscross between the different pages to give me some extra markings to line them up accurately. I could be wrong that that wasn't what I was supposed to do, but I felt like that just made it easier and it seemed to help those pages to join up correctly. I will show you for each of them. If this is not really clear when I'm holding it up, I may end up just inserting some pictures to give you an idea. But like I said, it did piece together fine, but I did feel like those joins were a little bit trickier with the minimal extra markings to make it easy for me. Now, Cashmerette did something that was truly glorious, and it made me so happy when I was piecing this PDF together. It might not come across in the pictures that I'm showing you. I really hope that it does. But can you see these grid lines that go across every page, all the way from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right? So these joins, you probably can't even see where these pages join together because it is so neatly put together, because I was able to line up so many markings across each page. This is a really, really wonderful feature, and I love Cashmerette for doing this, and I hope every pattern company follows suit, gives us grid lines. It is truly wonderful, and it made me very, very happy. Now the Mila shirt by Itch to Stitch, I feel like kind of split the difference. So it had more markings than the Busty Button-Up blouse, but not quite as much as the Cashmerette one. They gave you 4 corners of a circle on each corner of the page. So when you join up 2 pages together, that forms half of a circle in the corner. And then the other half of the circle will come when you bring the sort of top and bottom pages together. I felt like that made it a lot easier having multiple marking points on each page, so that it was really easy to make sure you didn't have it slightly skew if or slightly angled, so that everything was going to be a little bit more neatly gridded out. They also had this border, this black border around each of the pages. Again, I never know if I'm supposed to be cutting along that line, including that inside the cut piece, but it can make it easier to know that a line is definitely nice and straight. That's a bit easier to see visually, or you can even use a ruler if you want to get that crazy about it. I don't get that crazy, but you know, some people might want to make sure that it's super precise, but it just makes it easier to know that all of those pages are lining up really nice and neatly. So I felt like this one came together pretty easily. Like I said, because you're forming these circles, it's pretty easy to know that you've matched everything up as you should. And again, I've got these lines if I want to be extra sure that it's all lining up like it should. Something else that the Mila shirt did that I loved, that surprised me that none of the other pattern companies did, they have different colors for the different sizes. So if you print out in color like I do, I have a color printer, I always print in color. It's just so much easier if you are grading between sizes, printing multiple sizes, to be able to see exactly what size you want to cut out. It's probably not going to be very easy to tell from here. I will put an image up if I don't feel like I'm making it super clear on this image. But basically, when you print it out, it's just really obvious to know which size you need to go for each element, basically. All of these are going to have some kind of dots and dashes and different kinds of lines, thicker, thinner lines, to make it easy to pick your size. But having the colors is just so much simpler. I feel like I cannot get mixed up with the different, oh, is this 2 dots and a dash or 3 dots and a dash for these 2 different sizes? I have definitely gotten confused in the past. And with this, it just made me so happy to see those lovely colors on there. So taking all that into account, I need to pick a winner. They all had things that I liked. They all had things that I didn't like. For me, the winner is the Mila shirt by Itch to Stitch. It had lots of things that I liked about it. It was really easy to print just the sizes that you needed. It was really easy to piece it together, to find your actual size when you are cutting it out. Overall, my favorite is the Mila shirt for this particular part of the challenge. But this is not the end. This is just round 1. So I am going to be doing more videos for different elements of these patterns, comparing them side by side. The next one after this, round 2, is going to be looking at the instructions, the specific sewing techniques they use to make these shirts, and comparing them to see which one I like the best. And then round 3, the final one, is going to be looking at the overall fit, the shape, the style of the shirts, to compare them to each other, and then I will give you the overall winner at that point. So if you want to carry on watching these videos, if you want to see more of the Battle of the Busty Button-Ups, do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. If you enjoyed getting into the detailed nitty-gritty of these PDFs, give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it if you would do that, and I hope to see you all before long. Bye!